Hi friends! Hello, hi, how are you? I hope you guys are having an amazing day today. Hello! Hi, so today's video, first of all, candle of the day. This is from a brand called Apotheke, and this is their, I believe it's called a Rosebud candle. It smells amazing. I've already burned through like half of it. I'm obsessed with it. Today's video, we are going to be talking about something. I'm very interested in this topic, and I'm very interested to know what you guys think about all this, because I was scrolling through Twitter and I saw a fight between Trisha Paytas and Nikita Dragun a couple of weeks ago, and I noticed that Nikita, conveniently at the time of instigating a fight with Trisha, had a Snapchat show coming out, and I was like, that's suspicious timing. So I was like, I'm gonna watch the show. I'm gonna tune in. Hi friends, Editing Me here, and today I wanted to talk about today's video's sponsor, which is Prose. Prose is a brand that I've been using for almost 2 months now, and they're basically a custom shampoo and conditioner brand that uses an algorithm and a quiz to figure out the best products that you should be putting in your hair. Now, before I started using Prose, my hair was super frizzy, super dry at the ends, and also very oily at the roots. So I was having to wash my hair way more throughout the week than I wanted to, and even when I did wash my hair, it would always just look a little bit more dull and a little bit more flat and a little bit of frizz. Once I started using Prose, I noticed that my hair instantly, like after first use, was already significantly less frizzy and also way more less oily and more sort of shiny. Like it just had that really healthy hair look to it. And I also noticed that after sort of prolonged use, my hair started looking just less dead and a lot more alive. And also I could go way longer between washes than I could with the normal shampoo and conditioner I was using before. What I love about Prose is that it's completely customizable. So I got to pick like the scent that I put in it, which I love. And I also loved the fact that with hair stuff, a lot of times when you're buying stuff off the shelf, it feels very sort of one size fits all. Like you kind of just have to pick what might work for you and go from there. But with Prose, they really customize the formula to fit exactly what your hair needs. In order to use Prose, you basically just fill out this very simple quiz. It asks you questions not only about your hair, but about your lifestyle, which could be impacting your hair, which I actually thought was really cool. Like it asked me how much I exercise, asked me about like my eating habits, which was super helpful in figuring out the best products to be putting in my hair. And the other thing I love was that if I had tried this and the formula they had picked for me initially didn't exactly work, Prose has a review and refine feature that allows you to go in and sort of tweak everything around. Prose also has a flexible subscription service called the Salon that basically allows you to order from them monthly, and as a member you get discounts, free shipping, complimentary products, and you get to schedule your product time so that way you never are without Prose. So for example, I've been using this for like 2 months now, and I have about 25% of the bottle left. I don't know if you can see. I have about 25% left, so I actually signed up for the subscription plan like outside of the sponsorship, and have another bottle on the way so that way I'm not going to run out of this stuff because this is what I've been using. If you're interested in trying Prose, you can click the link in my description or go to try.prose.com/smokyglow to take your free in-depth hair care quiz and get $10 off your first order. You can also get an additional 15% off when you join their membership program, the Salon. Thank you so much to Prose for sponsoring this video. I've been using their products now for about 2 months. Really love them. Cannot stress enough how great it is. And yeah, go give it a try. Thank you. I'm not the biggest Nikita Dragun fan. If you don't know who she is, she's a 25-year-old social media influencer. She has like millions of subscribers across all of her social media platforms, but for the most part, her biggest platform is Instagram. I would also say she's definitely like a YouTuber. Kind of. She has almost 4 million subscribers on YouTube, and she definitely posts there from time to time. Most notably, one of her recent videos is with the Lopez brothers that she has refused to take down after the allegations have surfaced against them. But anyway, and the thing about Nikita, I might do a whole deep dive into her eventually because I do think that she has a very interesting sort of, you know, story and everything. But the big thing to note about Nikita is that one thing we've kind of seen from her career just so far is that it seems like the likes that she gets on Instagram and the, you know, views that she gets from YouTube, seems like that those followers that she does have don't necessarily follow her to the extent you see with other beauty gurus. She did a meet and greet for her brand Dragun Beauty where she like opened a pop-up store and did a meet and greet, and like not a lot of people came. Like basically nobody came. There's some very cringe content that came out of that meet and greet. And so I thought it was interesting that of all people, she got a Snapchat show, just because I think if we're talking influencers with a large amount of relevance, I think that she is a very relevant influencer, but I also think that a lot of her relevance doesn't necessarily come from people who are like diehard fans. A lot of her relevance comes from her being incredibly problematic and people calling her out for that. So I just think that's really interesting that like they chose her to do this show with. Now the show is called Nikita Unfiltered. I don't know, it's kind of the Tata Mojo effect of like unfiltered, but it's called Nikita Unfiltered. It's on Snapchat and every episode is only about 7 minutes and there's only about 10 episodes total. Now on her Instagram, Nikita claimed that this show broke records and was, and I quote, the most watched show ever, which is a bold claim to make when shows like, I don't know, Game of Thrones exist, but I guess this is the most watched show ever, and she claims that it broke all of these records and it was like the biggest thing for Snapchat ever. I have a hard time believing a lot of what Nikita says because my kind of introduction to her as a person was an interview that she did on Philip DeFranco's podcast called A Conversation With, where she literally just lied about being first in her class to graduate. So the only reason she said that she was first in her class, which typically means that you're like the top student, like you got the best grades, you're first in your class because you have the highest GPA. The only reason she said that was because she walked first physically at the graduation. She was the first person to start walking. So she said, I graduated first in my class. She definitely twists things. And was this like maybe the biggest Snapchat show ever? Maybe, but I don't really know how like impressive that is. I had to re-download Snapchat to watch this. So I feel like just from starting off, my perception of her in general about this show, like regarding everything, is poor because I just don't understand how. Anyway, so I have thought it'd be fun to go through the episodes 1 through 10 and just kind of talk you guys through what happened, because basically you probably don't want to watch it, but I feel like I could give some commentary. Spoiler alert, if you want to like skip the whole video that this is about to be, it was a very bad show. It was not very good, and there were not a lot of redeeming qualities. There were some, but it was not very good. I feel like I can definitely group in episodes 1 and 2 because they definitely have a similar vibe and a similar message, and honestly, episodes 1 and 2, despite the faults that we're about to talk about, were honestly the 2 best episodes of the entire show. So they still weren't very good, but they were definitely the strongest episodes out of the whole show as far as like having a plot and also relating it back to like what's actually happening in Nikita's life. Because I think that's the number one problem I have with this show, just like right off the bat, is that none of this, what we see besides episodes 1 and 2, seems to be very reflective of what Nikita's actual life is and looks like. So episode 1 is basically Nikita talking about all the big things she's doing in life. Like she bought her dream home, which they call the castle. It's just like a home. I don't know. They call the home the castle. It's Nikita's castle. She has this whole little bit about like how much her life has changed, which I'm sure it has. Like I'm sure she's gotten more famous. She obviously started Dragon Beauty. Like they're kind of just doing like a catch up from the first season. And then they cut to a photo shoot that she did with Patrick Starr, where they were basically dressed in like these little bodysuits. I think they did a music video or I don't know. But either way, it was her and Patrick Starr hanging out. And basically the tone of the conversation was talking about this guy that Nikita was talking to, who she called Mr. DL, which basically means Mr. Down Low. Now, right off the bat, this person that she is talking about in this context does not exist. Do I believe that this person is like a representative of other people that she's dated in her life? Absolutely. Do I think that at the time of filming, she was currently talking to somebody that she referred to as Mr. DL? No, I don't think that that person was real. And you can tell from like everything, like they try to stage it where like he calls her on the phone and she answers, but it's very obviously like not a real person. Like they're not having a real conversation. And also they try to stage it where like he sends her flowers. It's this whole thing, but this is not a real person. I would bet all of the money I have that he is not a real person that she was really talking to during the show. This was very obviously a sort of made up person to represent something else, which honestly I was okay with because I actually loved the sort of message of the first 2 episodes because it felt very authentic to Nikita. Basically, Nikita talked about the stigma of dating when you are trans and discussed how being a trans woman, a lot of times men kind of want to hide her and will only feel comfortable dating her privately but would never want to go public with her, and sort of the trauma that it induces and the pain that causes and how difficult that is for her. And honestly, honestly, I loved all of that because that is the type of stuff that needs to be talked about. Like, I love that she was being very open about what it's like being trans and what it's like dating as a person who's trans and how that affects everything, and how even though she's this mega famous celebrity, she still has to face this type of discrimination. I think that's so awesome that she talked about it, and I actually loved that part of the show. Even though this guy obviously wasn't real, what it represented and the relationship it represented was super, super interesting. And also in the second episode, Nikita has her friend who's a trans woman who is also transitioning come over and like reveal the plastic surgery that she had done. I guess it was like a female feminization procedure that would just make her face look more feminine. And they'd had a really like seemingly honest and authentic conversation about the transitioning process and what that was like, and how, you know, you wake up in this new face and how almost jarring that can be, how crazy it is to look back at old pictures. Like, they have this really awesome conversation about what it is to be trans and that process of transitioning. And again, like, that was awesome. I don't know where that friend went for the rest of the season. Like, I don't know where that friend left to, but I would have loved a whole season of the two of them, not obviously only talking about, you know, trans issues, because obviously there's more to her than just being trans, but having these like honest conversations and like really seeming to have on-screen chemistry that doesn't seem fake, and just like them being friends and talking about all these different things. Like, that was wonderful. Nikita, one of the big ways that she blew up, I know she was popular before this, but something that really blew her up was basically, I think it was the CEO of Victoria's Secret said that they didn't have any trans women in the Victoria's Secret show because trans women couldn't sell the fantasy. And that was obviously disgusting. It was hurtful. It was harmful. It was like such gross rhetoric to hear. And Nikita basically made her own Victoria's Secret commercial where she was like selling the fantasy, and she looked freaking gorgeous. Like, she absolutely slayed it. She had the wings, she had the like bra and underwear, she's just like walking around this beautiful mansion. Like, she looked gorgeous, and she basically was like, this is me selling the fantasy. You don't think that a trans woman can sell the fantasy? Like, think again. And she did. And again, like, those moments from Nikita, I genuinely feel are sort of this really actually authentic person that we're getting. But for whatever reason, after the second episode, the show does like an about face into this absolute fake bullshit that just like is not her real life, is obviously not what she's doing on the day-to-day, has no real substance, is very fake. And I don't know if that's just because they couldn't continue on that route because like Nikita didn't want to, or the show didn't find it interesting enough, or like whatever. But I personally found those first two episodes to be the most interesting and at least like real. Like, they felt real, even though the whole thing ended, this like Mr. DL ended with her texting him being like, this isn't working for me. And then he had bought her this like edible arrangement. Instead of just like eating the edible arrangement, she shoved the strawberries down the sink with a knife, but then threw away the box. So like, I don't know, very cringe, like a little bit weird. Not really the reaction I feel like you would have if you broke up with somebody, would be like shoving strawberries down the sink. By the way, I just find it really funny that like production obviously bought her those chocolate covered strawberries to like shoot this scene. And I just find it funny, like a PA showing up with those chocolate covered strawberries and then her having to dramatically dump them down the sink as if she was actually breaking up with somebody. Cause like, again, I cannot stress enough, that was not real. So it ends in kind of a cringy way after she's had all these conversations with all the people in her life about what it's like to date somebody who doesn't accept her and all of that, right? So we have these first two episodes that I'm like, okay, this is actually like not horrible. Like, I've definitely seen worse reality shows than this, like cue the Nikki and Gabby take the Bahamas. Like, I was like, yeah, this isn't that bad. And then we get to episode 3. Episode 3, they basically all of a sudden are like, okay, this isn't Nikita Unfiltered. This is The Bachelor. And we're just going to have a full-on Bachelor episode for like seemingly no reason other than allegedly Nikita just broke up with this other guy. So there's really no reason for any of this, and it also all feels very forced. Like, the 3 guys that end up showing up to be like the contestants are very obviously, there's one of them that looks like the type of guy that Nikita dates historically. He's like young and has abs. And then there's 2 other guys that are obviously a little bit older and like are obviously not the type of guy that she dates. And she basically says, well, I'm going to give you all nicknames because I can't remember people's names. And she gives them all nicknames. And then she's like, we're going to do these 3 challenges. And after every challenge, somebody's going to be eliminated. So they do the first challenge, which is just going through the guys' phones, which I think we can talk about how You shouldn't go through people's phones. Anyway, she goes through these guys' phones and like that's how she gives them their nicknames. But then like nobody gets cut. And then you go to the second challenge, which is a dancing challenge, which one of the guys who's a stripper is obviously like way better at the dancing challenge, like so much better. And then they do like a little Q&A. This all happens in the span of 45 seconds. So it flies by. Then they do a little Q&A where they answer questions. And she gives one of the guys this like super easy question. And then the other guy, she's like, how will you treat me respectfully? And he gives this like great answer. And so she picks the guy who's young and has abs, and it's like shocking, nobody. And then they have this drink and they, you know, chat or whatever. And the whole thing about it is the guy that they hired to play her sort of love interest is actually a very good actor. Like he really kind of sells it. He seems like very organic, normal interactions, like how you would interact with somebody on like a first date. Like that is how they're interacting. But Nikita is the one who is unable to sell that this is a relationship at all. She basically is just like acting like, you know, in like 7th grade when you had a boyfriend, but you like, and you were gonna like hug next to the water fountain and it was like a super big deal. Did I go to a weird middle school? I just remember everybody being like, oh my God, you guys are gonna hug. And it was so awkward and weird and you were like trying to play it off like you didn't care, but like secretly you were like freaking out. That's how Nikita acts this entire date. Like she just, and even in her like voiceover, her interviews, she's like, okay, so maybe he's into me. Like this is crazy. He's so into me. Like it was just weird. It was so awkward, so weird. And that was the entire 3rd episode, was just this Bachelor like competition out of nowhere. Like that's obviously not how she spends. My whole thing is, if you're gonna do a show called like blank unfiltered, at least Tana Mojo, to her credit, showed like her relatively day-to-day life. We got to see her like go to VidCon. She went to meetings. She did this. She did that. Like at least all of that was there. This is like completely set up BS that Nikita is not doing in her day-to-day life. She's not forcing men to have a dance competition in her day-to-day normal everyday life. Also, the whole trope about this guy that she picks is that he's just too nice. He's the nice guy. He's the good guy. And her big thing is like, he can't handle the fire of the dragon. But we like don't really see any fire from her. Like there's no fire of the dragon. She's just like kind of cold and aloof because it's obviously an actor hired to like her. The other thing I'm confused about is Nikita has gotten in like a scandal, I'm pretty sure, for hiring a guy to be her boyfriend, and then she caught feelings and he didn't, and then it was this whole drama. I really didn't keep up with the details of it, but I remember that all happening. So it's very weird to me that the show would like hire a guy to pretend to be her boyfriend. Like, why would they hire like, you know what I mean? If you had that history, why would you do that again? I don't know. But she seemed very cold and aloof and like not all that interested and very awkward in their conversation. But he definitely sold it a little bit more, at least. Now in episode 4, they basically derail everything and like stop the whole love interest arc that they've started in episode 3. And they talk about Nikita getting canceled. So I'm assuming at some point during the filming of this, I really wish they had switched episodes 3 and 4. Like I wish this episode was 3 just for continuity and for the sake of the show, because it would have given a little bit of filler between this fake breakup and this new fake relationship instead of the awkward placement of this episode. But regardless, this episode covers when Nikita got canceled for tweeting out. I guess she put out a tweet that was like, what skin color is Nikita gonna be today? And it talked about sort of the canceling that happened and all of these things. It talked about all of that without actually covering the root of the problem. I think it's really an art that they were able to cover everything without actually showing what the problem with the tweet was, which was that Nikita tweeting that out, she tried to say that she was just trying to be in on the joke because she feels like people mock her ethnicity, which I don't know if people do that or not, but the whole point of people bringing up like what race is she going to be today that I've seen is the Black community calling her out for her blatant blackfishing and appropriation of Black culture. It's a very serious thing that she's often accused of and often just like says she does not care about and does not listen and will just continue to wear the braids or wear clothing that she knows is going to upset people. I think she does it on purpose because it gets her attention personally. But so tweeting that out was really just her saying to the Black community specifically, like, hey, I acknowledge that I do this, but I don't care. I'm just gonna keep doing it. I know that she claims it was supposed to be like a joke and she was in on the joke, but But that's not at all what the tweet seemingly represented. And so Nikita got called out for this, and they basically show the behind the scenes of what happened at that time. So she talked about how being canceled was such a big deal for her career and how she could lose everything if she was canceled. And I also think that this part of the show was just cringy to me because I can't imagine thinking that everybody in the entire world cares about what I do. And I don't know if maybe I don't get it because I'm like not on her scale of being famous, but like I cannot imagine thinking that she literally says the words, like it's very conflated. Like she literally says the words, everybody in the world is watching you and waiting for you to mess up. And it's like, no, they're not. Is it like a lot of people? I'm sure. But to say like everybody in the world is gonna know if I screw up, everybody in the world is gonna hate me if I screw up. It was a very weird interview that she did. And then she also, there was a scene with like her manager who, very obviously, I think they were trying to pull from like the Tana Mojo messy client relationship. But this manager is just incredibly nice and Nikita is just incredibly respectful to him, as you should be with a manager. So it's almost boring how like simple their relationship is because he's super nice and understanding and she's respectful. But he basically talks about how they have this big Morphe collab coming up and she can't blow this by getting canceled right now and all of this other stuff. She talks about now because she's a business owner, everything is way more intense, which like, again, dive deeper into that. Talk about what it's like to be a brand and a business all in one. Talk about what it's like to have your personality and your reputation run your entire livelihood in your business. That's a fascinating topic. Like, let's go deeper. Every time they touched on something mildly interesting, I was like, okay, stop going on fake dates and like delve into that a little bit more. Cause like, that's actually so interesting. That would be an unfiltered conversation, is her discussing how when your personality is your brand, how you navigate that. They also show the behind the scenes of this like collab that she did with, I'm not sure who the girl was, but they did a collaboration, and before they start, this woman kind of calls her out on the tweet that she did. And again, I feel like it was very softball. I feel like they used this woman who was a black woman. Feels like they almost used her as like a prop to give Nikita this like redemption, because she was definitely a little bit more stern with her and was just kind of like, listen, like if I didn't know you, I wouldn't like you based on the shit you post online. But again, also I have to wonder like what was cut from that conversation, because it seemed like she really kind of explained to her why that tweet was so problematic and why that was such an issue, but they didn't show any of that. Like they just showed her being like, all right, we'll just do better. I don't want you to get canceled. Nikita's like, I don't want to get canceled either. The whole point of the episode is more about not wanting to get canceled and not focused on like wanting to be a better person who doesn't get this type of criticism because they just like don't do the thing in the first place. You know what I mean? Also, the show was shot in like October, November, and based on what I've seen, Nikita hasn't changed anything since tweeting that. So I was a little confused by that too, because it wasn't like there'd been any sort of major growth in her as a person since then. There's literally been none. Anyway, then we get into episode 5. So now the sort of explanation of the tweet has been put out. Now we're in episode 5, and from here on out, it is all about the fake romances, baby. She introduces a new love interest named Lewis, who is a TikToker, who at first I thought he was quite literally 16 years old because of how he looks, but I guess he's 21. And she talks about this TikToker Lewis and his other 2 friends, who I recognize Tati from TikTok. I've followed her and know about her, but I didn't know who the other person was. But it's these 3 TikTokers and how they came to live at Nikita's house and like make TikToks, and she has this big crush on this kid named Lewis. And here's the thing. I don't know if Lewis was just really bad at the assignment. Like, I just don't know if Lewis didn't understand the assignment, or if they literally just did not tell him that Nikita was going to be making him the love interest. I'm not sure which one it was, but Lewis has 0 interest this entire show in Nikita. Like, none, zilch, 0. There's no chemistry. There's no him sort of flirting with her. They literally take a moment of him being like, yeah, Nikita's fun to be around, while he's like eating a French fry. They take that moment and try to twist it in him secretly being in love with Nikita, and they're like have this will they won't they situation happening. And it's very, very weird. I don't understand why they picked somebody who had a very obviously like no real interest in her, and whether he just couldn't deliver on that or what. Like, I have no idea. Nikita's in the booth doing her little interviews being like, oh my God, Louis is so hot. I want to be with him so badly. Like, I think we'd make great babies together. We'd be so perfect. And Louis is like completely uninterested in everything happening. It really just shows her hanging out with these kids doing TikToks. And then also there's this weird scene in episode 5 where she meets with her manager again. We only see the manager twice, which sucks because he seemed really cool. We only see the manager twice, and there's another scene with the manager where they talk about her Morphe collaboration launch, and also how they talk about how Dragun Beauty is going to be launching in Morphe stores, right? And the manager basically tries to paint these kids, these TikTok kids, and this new guy, Louis, as like a distraction. And they have this whole conversation about how Nikita can't be distracted right now, and Nikita's basically like, I'm willing to give up freedoms for my career, like I'm willing to give up things for my career. And it's all very weird because it's like you're launching a collaboration with Morphe. And I would understand this sort of conversation of like, you can't have distractions around you if she was like, I don't know, preparing for an Academy Award winning role, or if she was like writing a book, or like when you're an influencer and a social media influencer, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're launching a palette with Morphe, or you're, you know, announcing that your brand is going to be with them, literally as an influencer, all you really have to do is like show up. All you have to do is show up to those launches, show up to those events, like post on Instagram about it, like not even show up in person because we're in a pandemic. Literally all you have to do is show up to those things. They don't require, that's why you have a manager, is because they do all the sort of behind the scenes work, and you just show up and you're like, here's my Morphe collab. Like, I don't really understand why they tried to paint it like she needs to be hyper focused on everything. And also like that conversation changes nothing. Like, she still lives with this kid, Louis. She still talks about him all the time. She still goes on dates with this other guy to create this like love triangle. Like, all of this still happens. And I think that whole conversation was meant to sort of show, like, I think the point of putting it in was to try and represent this very serious business that she's running and how she's running this massive corporation. But like, we don't see any of that. We don't see her working on Dragun Beauty. We don't see her working on, you know, her Morphe collab. Like, if we jump to episode 7, there's a brief little interlude where they show her handing out her Morphe PR boxes. And like, why was that not a whole episode? I want to see her. If we're gonna see her real life, unfiltered, I want to see her running her business, running her brand. Otherwise, I assume that she doesn't. She just doesn't run the brand. I want to see her like making decisions on launches. I want to see like all of these things, making the decision about the Morphe stuff, on the phone with Morphe, like the interesting side of her business. We never ever see that. All we have is this conversation of her manager trying to make it seem like her business is something that she takes very seriously and something that she puts a lot of time and effort into. But we don't actually see any of that time and effort put into it. It's very strange. And then episode 6 is honestly just more of focusing on this fake relationship with Louis. They go to like an arcade and they eat French fries, and you can tell that they told the 2 TikTokers that they were with, the 2 other kids that were there, you can tell they told them to be like, pry about Nikita and Louis's relationship. Like, go ahead and ask them questions about will they, won't they. Make it seem like there's this will they, won't they between them. But all of that falls flat because Louis, the main kid, does not care about Nikita at all. Like, he literally could not care less about forming a relationship with her or acting like they have any sort of chemistry. There's none of that. Their conversations are so awkward, and you can tell that the producers were trying to get things moving with it via these other 2 kids who actually were trying to push it along, and Louis just had zero interest in any of that. Episode 8 also introduces another guy, which is like, I can't handle the fake relationships, but basically this was a guy that she had a thing with last season in season 1, and they had this kind of will they, won't they friendship going on, and it ended up they didn't, and they ended their friendship, and they haven't talked in over a year, and they basically went out to dinner and had this really long, it was the whole episode basically, was this conversation that she had with this guy Oscar, and it was really just nothing of like substance. Like, he was asking if she was seeing anybody, she was like yes. They were talking about what she deserves. It all felt so just like non-authentic. Like, I think that's my biggest problem with these sort of episodes, the ones that focused around conversation, is like, if you were to have a conversation with your friend, that is not how any of these conversations would go. If you were talking to your friend about like your boyfriend or boy troubles or girl troubles or whatever troubles, like, you would not be talking like this. And I think that was weird. It also ended with them being like, I guess we're friends again, but I don't know, maybe we will date. It was very, very, very weird. That's the best way I can describe all of these episodes so far, is it's just weird. Also, funny side note, the masks that she wears throughout the episodes get smaller and smaller as we go through all of these episodes. The mask gets more clear and smaller the more she shoots. And again, the only interesting part about this episode to me was when she was delivering PR boxes to like Charlie D'Amelio, but they didn't even really show that. The one thing she does is like an influencer that's kind of interesting. They don't even show. Episode 8 is all centered around this like shopping trip that she does with Lewis, which again is just some of the cringiest dialogue you'll ever see. Like, for example, he was talking about how he had a niece or nephew or something and was like, oh, I'm used to baby shopping because I have a niece or nephew. And she was like, oh, you're trying to play all cool? Like you go baby shopping? And he was like, no, I have a niece and nephew. And she was like, oh, you have so many baby mamas that you take care of? And he was like, no, I just have a nephew. And like, I'm not kidding. That's literally word for word a conversation they have. And she's trying to make it all like sexy and fun. And she's like, ooh, we're baby shopping. We'd have the cutest babies. And he's like, yeah, look at this cool hoodie for your nephew. Like, that looks lit. Like, they have no chemistry. None. And the thing that kills me is, in the interview, Nikita's trying to be like, oh, he's sending me all these mixed signals. We have so many mixed signals that we're going through. And like, there's no mixed signals. He's not in, you know that movie that like, he's just not that into you? That is the epitome of what this is. And honestly, I don't think Nikita is all that interested in him either. I think that the show was just like, okay, we're shooting, we need a guy for you to be into, and she picked him. Like, I don't think she's hyper invested in him either, just based on the way that they communicate and the way that she talks to him, unless that's how she talks to guys that she's trying to flirt with, but like, I don't know. They have this whole conversation over lunch where like, he's always on his phone, and that leaves room for Nikita to be like, oh, he's just a clout chaser. He just loves to be on his phone. And it's like, well, he's 21 and he's on a date that he doesn't know he's on a date. So I don't know. And also that lunch is so funny because he literally, like, she tries to be like, well, you could stay with me in LA, but what if I get a boyfriend? Like, aren't you gonna be jealous of my boyfriend? And he's like, no, I wouldn't really be jealous. Like, clear as day, no mixed signals. And then she's like, well, I'm seeing this guy, but like, I don't know. And he's like, oh, I want to meet your friend. Like, I want to meet this guy that you're talking to. Like, I'm your friend. I should get approval. He's literally talking to her as if they're just friends, which is seemingly all that they are. And she's the one trying to make it all like weird and sexy when it's just not. And then at the end of this whole date, that's not a date, it's just this kid not understanding what's happening, Nikita calls her sister and basically tries to like talk to her sister about all of this. And again, this is where they really touch on like, oh, he must be a clout chaser. So I think that's what Lewis was supposed to represent, was like the sort of clout chasing that sometimes influencers have to deal with in relationships. But it just fell so flat because he wasn't trying. It's so obvious he just wants to be friends with her. Now in episode 9, she goes on another fake date with this other guy that she met during the Bachelor style episode, and like, he meets her friend and their friend gives her all this advice about how good it is to date a nice guy. And again, like, he really is just being painted as like the nice guy. He's like very flirty, he's very sweet, and she's just like, I don't know, I hate nice guys. He can't handle the dragon, even though the dragon is just her being uninterested. I don't know. It's like whole thing. The episode 9, there really isn't much to say there. But then we get into episode 10, which you might have seen clips from this scene online because I know a couple of them went viral. But basically Nikita decides, I cannot possibly choose between these two guys, so I'm going to invite both of them to a dinner, and both of them are going to be there, and all of my other friends are going to be there, and that's how I'm going to decide, seeing them next to each other. So she invites the nice guy, and she invites the guy who's an actor, and she invites the guy who has no interest in her from TikTok. And basically, nice guy who's an actor, she's like, you know what, just can't do it. I don't like you, nice guy, goodbye. And she breaks up with him. And to his credit, he really sells the sadness he feels over the breakup. Like, probably oversells it. That's when I realized he was an actor, like, truly, was the breakup. Because he really gets almost a tear in his eye. And that was just a little much. But anyway, he really sells this heartbreak, really is like, okay. And Nikita's just like, bye. And sends him on his way, which honestly, respect it. Like, I respect the cleanness of that breakup. So then she goes back into this like sushi place or whatever, and her friend texts her and is like, look at what Lewis just posted on TikTok. And he posted a TikTok with this blonde girl. They aren't like making out in the TikTok. They aren't like doing anything weird. They're literally just dancing. And Nikita flips out. She takes his phone and throws it behind her into the pond that is behind them. So she throws his phone into the water, and he pretty rightfully is upset, and he like kind of pushes his chair back a little dramatically to leave because he's like, what the fuck? And she says, oh, you want to play the attitude game? Okay. And then flips the table over at the restaurant screaming at him. And he just walks away. And her other friends, who, how you know this is planned is because the other two kids that are her friends and the TikTok kids that are there walk away laughing hysterically going, I can't believe she actually did that. Meaning that that was completely pre-planned. And they were like, no, Nikita, this is the last episode. So they were like, this is your big dramatic moment. Like, you're going to flip the table and you're going to tell him what's up because he's been playing games with you, even though he literally has not. And then it ends with her and her friend having this conversation where they basically say like, fuck all men, all we need is each other. The friend we've known for like one episode. And it feels like this is supposed to be the climax. It feels like this is supposed to be the grand finale of like Nikita realizing she doesn't need a man and she's just happy by herself. But because there's been no chemistry buildup between honestly either of the guys that she's been talking to, there's just no real end to this. It's just all so fake and unreal that it's like hard to feel any emotion. With the very obvious sort of table flip setup, it feels even more disingenuous. And then it all just ends. And that's the last episode, and like that's all that happened. So the show's over. That was all 10 seasons. It was about 70 minutes of my life. And honestly, it was very bad. And not even just because like I'm not a big fan of Nikita. Because I do think like I don't like a lot of people and I still find content they put out enjoyable or find shows like this entertaining. It wasn't even that. It was like she's horrible. It was really just poor everything. Like instead of focusing on what would be the very interesting parts of her life or focusing on the more real parts of her life, it's all this very fake dating game. Like for whatever reason they chose the main plot point to be romance, which I don't understand because there's nothing people hate more than fake romance for TV. It's like the stupidest thing ever. But they decided for the plot point to be romance, and then when there wasn't any real romance anywhere, they just made it up and then like ran with it. And it ended up being so just cringy and uncomfortable to watch. Like the entire thing was so cringy, and it also feels like it really lacked direction. Like some episodes it was about her career as an influencer, some episodes it was about like her manager, some episodes, for how short the episodes were, they sure crammed a lot of different plot points into them without a lot of follow through. And then for the whole season to be about sort of her finding love and all these fake relationships, for her to not even end up with anybody and just be like, oh, we hate men, I'm gonna be with my best friend, was just so anticlimactic and weird. I don't know. I was really thrown by the whole season and how bad it truly was, because I've never really watched Snapchat shows, so I guess I didn't know how good it was supposed to be, but I definitely didn't anticipate it being so fake. I know that a lot of reality shows are fake, but this was like new levels of fakeness that I found to be very interesting. So yeah, let me know your thoughts just based on what I said. I really did, I feel, summarize it fairly well. So let me know what you think if you watch the show. Let me know what you think. I'm very interested to hear all of your opinions on this. And yeah, I love you guys so much. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, or just like, or just subscribe, or do neither. Honestly, just so happy you're watching me. Thank you so much for being here. My merch, my social media, and everything I'm wearing on my face will be linked down below, along with some links and information about Sexual Assault Awareness Month and ways that you can help and stay involved. Stay informed, stay involved. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!